Hi, I'm Rex Black, President of RBCS. Welcome to the RBCS YouTube channel. Hey, I hope you enjoy all these free resources that are available here. And do us one favor. We need to keep the lights on and we need your help to do that. So, when you need testing and quality related services, training, consulting, expert services, you name it, let us be one of the bidders on that next job. We don't expect to get all of your business, but we'd like to get a chance. Thanks and enjoy the shows.
On these things. Okay, now job description. You've got all the pieces here, so put together the job description. Things like tasks and responsibilities, level of experience, again, specific skills, training, education, and so forth. Notice that all of these first few bullet items are something that are pretty much addressed by your task analysis. As I said, distinguish between the must-haves and the nice-to-haves, and then add things like hours, dress code, start date, career path, and so forth. Now let me talk about career path a little bit here. The person is going to want to progress, right? Now you have an immediate need typically. That's why you've got a hiring requisition. You need somebody to do job X. So it can be very tempting to lose track of this issue of where are they going. But you got to think about it, because for one thing, if you hire somebody and you haven't talked about it, the candidate doesn't talk about it, then this is the beginning of them being unhappy at some point down the line. So think about this, talk about it with the candidates. What are the realistic career paths in the organization? Make sure that you've talked about this with HR. You have an immediate need, as I said, as a manager, but down the road, sooner or later, this tester is going to be moving into other positions, test lead positions, test manager positions, what have you, and you need to make sure that you consider that area. Okay, so now you've got, as the cliche goes, you've got your ducks in a row. So now it's time to actually start getting candidates. Now, so the first part is, of course, gathering up and screening people's resumes. You can get these sort of classified ads. You can get them off of college job boards if you're looking for entry-level people. Internet, you can talk to your peers. You've got a lot of options available to you here. And of course, there are recruiting companies, and we help clients with staffing too. You can look at contractors, either current or former contractors. So there are a lot of sources. Make sure that if you're going to use a recruiter, you're going to try to convert contractors, make sure that you look at the issues associated with that. So gather up your resumes and then start checking them against the job description. And to the extent that somebody doesn't have the required skills, then you should eliminate them. Do not spend time interviewing people who are not qualified. Now, when you've whittled down that list, at that point, as a manager, you're probably going to want to involve other people in the interview process. You really should. Your company is going to require it, and even if they didn't, you really need to do that. But circulate the resumes of people who look like they're worth talking to other people in the interview process and get their input. And again, if they come back and say, no, this person's not a fit, here's why, then you should eliminate them. Now, this might sound pretty brutal, but interviewing is expensive. In-person interviewing is expensive. Before you bring someone in, you should have no information that says, I'm not going to hire this guy. Because if you've already made that decision, that looking at a man or woman's resume, you've already decided this person is not a fit here, you are not doing anyone, including the candidate, any favors by having an interview that's going nowhere. You're wasting your time, you're wasting their time, you're creating false hope amongst them, you're burning out the people involved in the interviews, so don't do it. Filter people out. Okay, now, those who survive this filtration process now go to a phone interview, and so, you're going to want to do things like confirm skills and so forth, and I'll get into interviewing both live and phone interviewing here in a minute. But, go check skills, check attitude, and so forth. And again, the whole point of this is sometimes called a phone screen for good reason, because if anything comes up, anything pops up that you now say, I am not going to hire this person, then that's the end of the process, and you should bring the process to a close with that person in a dignified fashion, but one that definitively brings it to a close. Now, I want to point something out. I mean, we're talking a lot about screening, and remember, you have a responsibility as a hiring manager to do this in a way that is ethical and that is legal, right? So if you probably need to talk to your HR folks about what can and cannot be considered, because there are some ways to get yourself into some pretty significant trouble here. So do be careful with this. And finally, check references. Now, a lot of companies will have HR people that do this for you, and that's great, or you can use outsourced firms to kind of mitigate the risks associated with reference check, but you should do a reference check. You want to make sure that, just be blunt about this, I mean, lies abound on resumes. I've seen some real whoppers, and if somebody's lying on their resume in some material way, to me, that's a total disqualifier. You just somebody who talks themselves into a job based on skills they don't have, with the assumption that they're going to soft shoe it through the first few months and you'll pick up the slack. You don't need a person like that working for you. And given how the job market has been lately, you are not that desperate. I mean, there are qualified people out there, so don't settle. Okay, hire someone who you really feel like this is exactly the right person for the job, because they're out there now. Okay, so on that note, warning signs to look for on resumes. If somebody's got some sort of buzzword, Agile test leader or something like that, okay, fine. Help me understand what you know about Agile, right? If somebody says they got Mercury experience, or HP now experience. Okay, great. Show me where you applied that. Especially the phone interview, but also if somebody gets to an in-person interview and you feel like there's something that's still not clear, make sure that you clarify that. Degrees, certifications, licenses, and so forth, you might look for those and verify those. Things to watch out for as well, people who change jobs too much. Now, this can be, you have to look at this, right? I mean, the rule used to be that if people were staying on a job for less than 2 years, it was a trouble sign. But, the economy's been so funky lately, and there's been a lot of involuntary separations that happen. So you have to really kind of look at that. Well, why did somebody lose their job? Gaps in employment history, again, this just has to be clarified as to why. I mean, people have been laid off and out of work for a long time, and you owe those people a fair hearing, So I'm not going to say somebody who had the bad luck to get laid off hasn't been able to find a job. People say, oh, well, that's because they really had the skills, they'd have a job. Well, that's not really fair. So much of this stuff has been regional. The downturn, so much of it has been regional, but there have been people that in booming regions, for example, like Sydney, Australia, or Melbourne or something, would be continuously employed, but in San Francisco or Silicon Valley could be out of work for 18 months. Same set of skills, same guy, same person, So not saying disqualify based on gaps in employment history, but make sure that somebody's got a convincing story to tell about why there is such a gap. And then if there's like this changes of career, that's something to look at. Like, oh, I was an opera singer for 14 years, and now I'm a software tester. Okay, there could be what I refer to rather sarcastically as a Peter Pan problem in these cases, where they don't want to grow up. And, sooner or later you commit, you become a professional, and that implies that you have a career and you stick with it. And you don't want to be some landmark on somebody's personal growth journey. Let's see. I got somebody saying the audio was breaking up. System check was okay, so it must be on your end or in transmission. Sorry about that, Vernon. I take it from the fact that we still have 80 people online, and we had at one point in excess of 95 people online, that whatever audio problem we were having must have cleared up. But if you were experiencing audio difficulties. I do apologize for that. We not heard reports of that before, but I will check the recording of this webinar and make sure that that the audio there is good. If you did have audio problems, there will be a recorded version of either this session, or if the problem was actually systemic, it'll be the next session, the one in the evening. So you can go back and listen to the recording. Question from Rich. Good to hear from you, Rich. And by the way, I got your email. We'll be responding to that a little later. I'm kind of backlogged now, but Rich's question: your view of hiring seems to reflect a test and evaluation engineering paradigm. If an employer's test focus is tool-centric versus engineering-centric, does the hiring manager follow their professional gut or hire the person that pushes the tools? Okay, good questions. Now, on this issue of gut, one of the things that my business partner has impressed upon me, and I've never gone wrong listening to this, is that you should trust your gut. And if your gut is telling you that somebody is not going to work out, and you know why this is a defensible thing, it's not just I don't like that person because they're different, because that gets you into discrimination type of territory. But if it's a defensible thing, your gut saying, I'm not confident that this person is going to be able to test our system because they don't know X, Y, or Z, then I think you need to follow your gut. As far as hiring a person that pushes the tools, now, no. I mean, I would always, and I'm mindful of your employer, Rich, too, but so, no offense meant here, but I'm always skeptical of somebody who is dogmatic, who is a quote-unquote true believer. I really want to see people that have healthy skepticism about anything that might be perceived as a silver bullet, as Brooks put it. So I would not hire someone who pushed the tools. Now, if there are a lot of tools in use in your testing operation, then by all means, those capabilities should show up in your task analysis and be a very critical part of it. So I am not by any means saying, oh, don't worry about tools, that'll take care of itself. No, I mean, if it's central, then it's central, and you need to interview for it. But again, from an attitude point of view, if somebody's coming in and they're like, this tool solves every problem, I mean, give me JUnit, and then I can, make all the quality problems go away. Well, that's a person who's going to be a real pain in the neck. Constantly advocating things, not very open-minded, very dogmatic. So you don't want people like that for sure. I hope that addressed the question, Rich. It was a real good one. Rodney asks, how do you interview so that people not hyper-focused or not focused enough on tasks, after you hire, but how do you interview for it? Yeah, boy, this gets into the behavioral interviewing question, and I realize that you asked this question before I got into that, but let me go back to the behavioral interviewing and tie that in. What you would try to do is say, ask about situations where people were forced to make a decision about how much time to spend on writing a bug report or writing a test case or doing something else, and see what they say about how they made that decision, and then circle in on this and get even more specific and say, great, well, tell me about a situation where you felt that you were really challenged in your ability to maintain proper focus, and how did you resolve that? And that'll really get you some insight into how people think this way. And, if they say, well, I don't resolve that. If I'm confused about what the right thing is to do next, I go and ask the manager. That might be the right answer for a junior level person, but if you're hiring a more senior level person, that's just absolutely a disqualifier to me, or an indication that they've worked with this horrible micromanagers in the past, and you might want to explore that a little before you reject somebody out of hand. But if somebody's going to just sit stunned when they're at a loss for what to do next until you give them more guidance, then that's not really the kind of person you want to have. I don't think. That's not the kind of person I hire. Rodney's got another follow-up. question here. How do you interview so that people will apply critical thinking to a specification? Many people that are good at finding bugs have a hard time finding issues in specs. Great question, Rodney. And again, now this is going to get us to, I'll tie back to audition interviews here. Give somebody a spec that you know has problems in it. So for example, we have a couple specifications that we use for our training courses. One's a network of public internet access kiosks, and the other is a banking application. And those specs have been through lengthy reviews as part of classes and so forth. I know where the bugs are, and we've got those documented. So what I would do is give somebody that spec, and if that's really central to what they're going to do, and say, you've got 15 minutes to read this thing, and I want you to come back and have identify as many problems as you can, and explain to me what the problem is. And you want people to identify both the kind of the subtle things as well as the trivial things as well as the serious things. So serious things would be like, there's a contradiction between two parts of the document that have to do with handling personal private information. That's obviously a serious problem, right? The subtle stuff like, well, you've got one version number in the footer on the first page and a different version number in the footer on the subsequent pages. Does that indicate some sort of configuration management problem, or just somebody forgot to update the versioning information in the Word document? And then trivial things would be stuff like misspellings and grammatical errors that make the documents potentially confusing, and you want people to be able to find all three, but obviously somebody who can only find the simple things like spelling problems and that sort of stuff, you don't want to hire someone like that, because that person's going to reinforce the really unfortunate stereotype that some people have about testers, which is that we're just these sort of zero value add beside the point nitpickers, and if that perception exists amongst any of the stakeholders in the testing organization in your company, that's, you really have to reverse that, but you just don't want that to ever arise, right? So, and then that gets back to focus, right? Focus on finding the substantive problems, not trivialities. Let's see, got a question from Roy. Roy, good to see you back again. Is this presentation going to be available at the website? Absolutely. It will be. The recorded version will be posted real soon now, in the next few days, either of this session or of the evening session, depending on which one makes a better recording. And the PowerPoint slides are in a PDF form. I believe they are on the basic library. You got to go to the very bottom of the basic library page, and you should find them there. Gene asks, may I have a copy of the Excel sheet, the skills analysis matrix? Absolutely. It is out on the RBCS website, rbcs-us.com, and it's either, if you go to the resources tab, it's either on the basic library or the digital library. The basic and digital libraries are organized by, well, this first is like present. No, you need to be sure that they're going to be committed. Reference checks. If you're checking references yourself, listen to what they say and also what they don't say. People are going to tend to be very nervous when they're being asked to provide a reference because there's some potential legal liability there, and so, listen carefully. Now, if your company has people who do this for you, then that's great. Let them do it. This is a job that is often best done by professionals, but if you can do it, or if you're the one who needs to do it, then definitely do it. Don't not do it because you're like, nothing interesting is going to come out of this. It can, especially if you read between the lines. Okay, so interviewing. Interviewing needs to consist of a few kinds of questions during the interview. Now, one of the set of questions is what I call qualification questions. So these can be true, false, or multiple choice, or structured written responses. The other way that's sometimes explained is you give someone a question like, you've got an input field that accepts anywhere from 1 to 99 as the quantity to be ordered on an e-commerce application. Tell me what you're going to test and why. Now, that person should trot out something related to equivalence partitioning and boundary value analysis at some point in their answer to that, and certainly identify 0, 1, 99, 100, and possibly negative numbers, really large, positive numbers, character strings, decimal digits, decimals, floating point numbers, those sort of things. All that stuff should come out of them if you leave that as an open-ended question. If you give them multiple choice, and you give them a list of things, and that's obviously easier. But make sure that they can explain why they chose the answer, right? I mean, that's the advantage of this being an interview, not an electronic exam. So formulate some questions based on technology, based on programming, based on the business domain, but mostly on testing. And we've got we've done some work with clients before where we've built these kinds of question banks for them. So if you're interested, get in touch with us, and we'll help you do it. It's something fairly straightforward for us to do because we've got a lot of experience with it, but people who don't have experience building exam questions, other kinds of qualification questions often have a problem with this. Okay, so behavioral questions. Behavioral questions are another type of question that you would ask, and this is about how somebody is likely to behave at work. And questions like the one shown on this screen, the manner and tone you use to discuss a bug report with other team members. You ask, well, tell me about this. Tell me about a bug report you wrote that was controversial and what happened with that. What do you like about your work? What do you like about being a tester? If you tend to have a lot of overtime, then say, we have projects that require overtime, and, tell me about the last time you worked on a project where you worked 60 hours a week. What was your experience on that project? So basically the idea is to try to get a feel for what's it going to be like to work with this person. How do they behave? And because these are not hypothetical questions, that they're based on usually, tell me about some sort of experience that you had, unless the person is a fabulous raconteur and able to make things up on the spot, this is going to give you some insight into their attitudes and personality, which comes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the presentation. Now, finally, another piece of the interview should include what I refer to as audition interview. I didn't make this name up. I'm not sure how far it goes back, but I've been using this technique for 15-ish years, I guess now. Basically, the idea of an audition interview is you have someone actually demonstrate the skills needed for their job. So one of the things that we've done is we're hiring a tester, someone who's going to run tests. We give them a written test case that we know is going to fail. And we set them up on the system. Of course, at this point, they've probably got non-disclosure in place. And we have them run the test case. And we say, okay, here's a notepad. If you see any problems, write up some bug reports. And we've had situations where people came back, and again, tests that we know will fail, said, everything was fine, it passed, no big deal. People who are doing well in the interview up to that point sometimes would say that. And that's obviously a complete disqualifier, because if they can't follow a written test case and recognize an anomaly when one's staring them right in the face, you definitely don't want to hire that person. So, some task that's related to what the tester is going to do. Have someone write a portion of a test case, something like that. This should be clearly traceable to their day-to-day activities and work. You want to get a sense of, can they do this? Okay, so at the end of that process now, you've gone through and you've looked at people's skills and attitudes, personality, and so forth, and you should be able to make a hiring decision. It's somebody who survives the gauntlet that I've just laid out for you, that goes all the way back to establishing the right personality traits that you want, the skills, and so forth, and then going through this rather grueling interview process that I suggested. What's going to come out of that? Well, what's going to come out of that is you're going to hire really great testers. You're not just going to hire people who are like, got a lot of potential. She'll grow into the role. you know, you want to hire people where you say, yeah, no, this woman that I've just hired is going to be absolutely one of the best testers I've ever hired. You know, based on what you feel at the end of that process, and the other people who are involved. You know, that's what you want. You want to have confidence. And again, you know, as I said before, don't settle. You don't need to settle in the current economy. There are people who've been, you know, it's been tough, and there are people out there now. Hiring is starting to pick up now, you know, but people are still pretty hungry, and you're going to be able to get good people. You don't have to settle in most markets. Again, as I pointed out at the beginning, you know, there's the DeMarco Lister rule about great employees 10 times more effective than a poor employee. So this is not just a matter of margins. This is not like a 10, 20% one way or the other thing we're talking about. We're talking about order of magnitude here. Also, keep in mind that there's a general rule that when a tester is managing a team that has a problem employee in it, or the test manager is managing a team, and really any manager is managing a team that has a problem employee in it, that manager will spend half of their time dealing with the problems that are created by that employee. So, you know, you do not want to make a mistake. So again, attributes, personality, skills, measurable skills, skills that will grow the overall skills of your team, what you're looking for here. And just overall, you know, this is what I've laid out is a very deliberate, careful process that will allow you to conduct very smart interviews and make smart hiring decisions. So, you know, keep focused on that objective. You want to hire absolutely the best people, and again, you know, at this point in history, you don't need to settle. This is a perfect time to hire really qualified people. Okay, so that concludes the presentation as a whole. There's a lot of material this time, so we went over the usual 60 minutes of presentation, and we still have plenty of time left in the overall 90 minutes for some questions from the audience. So let me fire up the questions panel here while you guys look at the advertisement. Let's see. Oh boy, we got a lot of questions. Good. Patients, and then there's articles, and then under that, the resources are grouped by the part of the test process they relate to, based on the 12 process critical testing processes framework that I have. So if you look at test team, that's the process area, and you'll be able to download that spreadsheet. There's at least one out there. There might actually be two. And there's a detailed explanation of how that spreadsheet works in Managing the Testing Process, 3rd edition. So if you get a copy of that book, it'll explain exactly how that's used. It's also explained in critical testing processes too. A question from Ray Lynn. Some reference checks are not productive. For instance, an applicant doesn't want to tip off their current employer, so the references may not be the most current. Also, some companies will not give much information. I know of places that will only give a yes or no that a person has worked at the company. Any hints on how to work around this? Well, geez, yeah. I mean, if somebody doesn't want to give their current employer because they don't want to tip off that they're looking for a job, I mean, that's certainly legitimate. Now, maybe they can provide a reference who is a colleague there rather than a manager, which is not quite as good, but you know, that might be something that's workable. As far as companies that will only give yes or no's and only confirm employment, yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to work around that, and yeah, you can run into brick walls here. And this is where, you know, outsourcing the reference checks can sometimes be helpful in states that, you know, this is really a matter of state law in a lot of cases. The state laws tend to make people really skittish. Like California is notorious for this. People are so worried about getting sued over something that they might say, and of course, a reference check that they'll, you know, you have these company policies that say, you know, all reference checks get re-referred to the HR manager, and the HR manager is only allowed to confirm dates of employment, and that's it. And that's just sort of a brick wall, you know. So it's unfortunate, but you can't expect people to take legal risks essentially on your behalf. Question from Tom. Do you think a technical test is a good screening process before bringing a candidate in for an interview? Well, could be. I mean, if you've got the technical capability in your organization, you could indeed have as a prerequisite somebody going online and taking a secured version of an exam. So, for example, if you've got an e-learning capability in your company, then you could have some sort of SCORM hosted, SCORM being a packaging for e-learning. You could have some sort of SCORM package of exams out there, and when you do a phone interview, part of the phone interview is you direct the person out to take the exam while you're on the phone. You give them the password and login information while you're on the phone, and you make sure that they complete it while you're on the phone with them, just to make sure that there's not any coaching going on, right? Or completed within an hour of you getting off the phone with them or something, but that's going to have some risk of them coaching. But that's certainly something that you can do, and that's something we've helped clients put together before. So if you are interested in that, we can certainly help you do that. And I think if you've got the in-house training department, they can probably help you put something like that together. But keep in mind, the questions are really going to be key here, and developing good screening questions, good qualification questions is a real skill. So make sure you spend some time doing this if you're going to try to do it yourself, rather than hiring a company like ours or some other company to do it. Douglas asks, do you believe that it's a good idea to get people from development side and prepare them for a QA position? Well, maybe. I mean, I think the problem there is that they might not be happy to be there long term, or they might not be that interested in acquiring the necessary application domain and testing skills and so forth. So I guess certainly I'm aware of many cases where people made that transition from development to QA successfully and were valued QA resources. But I would say, look at the skills part of the equation and look at the attitude and motivation part of the equation too. And really that's true for anyone. Bernard asks a related question. Good to see you here, Bernard. I hope you're having a good day there in France. Testing is not always seen as glamorous as development. How you convince people that this is a good career move? Yeah, that's certainly something you need to look at, especially if the culture in your company or in your country is that the testing is not as glamorous. This is where the career path comes in, right? If you've got a good career path that you can lay out for people, then you want to sell them on that in a sense. Like say, here's where your career is going to go. Issues like glamour and so forth. I mean, if people are making decisions about jobs they want to take based on that sort of thing, and that strikes me as pretty shallow. And it might be that you're not really, as I said, thinking through this issue of career path and giving people good insight into where they could go. As a more mature person, I would think, would tend to go, wow, okay, well, look at all the different things I could do and places I could go through this job based on the career path. I'm going to go for the better career path. Thank you for the question, Bernard. Hajo, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is a Dutch name, de Queesian. Please repeat URL location of that great qualification example Excel sheet. So go to rbcs-us.com and then click on the resources tab. It's kind of to the left center of the screen, and you're going to see down's going to come a list, and on that list you should see the basic library and the digital library and the advanced library. And the spreadsheet is either on the basic library or the advanced. I'm not sure which, but if you go to one and don't find it there, try it on the other. As I said, each of those worksheets or each of those pages is organized by the 12 process areas in the critical testing process framework. So go down and find the one that relates to test team, and you should find it out there. Confirmation from Hajo that audio was good, so glad to hear that. And Bernard also saying no audio problems in France. So it sounds like this one gentleman had a glitch, which is regrettable. Alex says no audio problems in Czech Republic. Alex, good to hear from you. All good quality, no breakup, good content too. Thanks, Rex. Thanks, Alex, for tuning in, and thanks for confirming the audio was good. Ray Lynn asks, you've given many things for an employer to look for in a tester, but I wonder if the suggestion of many things a tester needs to look for in a prospective employer, maybe another webinar. That is a great point, Ray Lynn. Love it. Love the idea. How to pick a winner of an employee, like companies that can move your career. I am making a note of that. Testers should pick company. That is a great suggestion on a future webinar, and we are going to do it. So keep an eye on the invites. Sometime in 2011, there will be an webinar at exactly this point, because, of course, your career path, you need to, you as the interviewee need to take control of this. And Raylan, I really thank you for pointing that out, and it's going to be a great webinar. I hope to see you there. Gamaliel says, thanks for all the good ideas. Take the summary with me from this webinar. Look for personality, skills, means to determine these, interview intelligently. I hope I'm translating that properly from Spanish. Yes, I think that's a good summary. Look for the right personality, look for the right skills, make sure that you're able to determine both of those, and do smart interviewing. Absolutely. Alan asks, what is the ratio of interviewee to interviewers do you suggest? Folks in the room at any one time for how long? That's a good question. I am not a huge fan of the group interviews, in that this can sometimes be tough on people, though I suppose you could make a case that management positions really should be, because that's consistent with how how the manager ends up working. But I'd say, try to do mostly one-on-ones, I guess would be the short answer to that. And if you're going to do group interviews where you're going to have multiple people in the room interviewing the guy, just make sure that that's done in a way that's not intimidating. I've seen that be really, really intimidating to people. I've got so many more good questions here, and we're out of time. I want to try to pick one or two, and then for those of you who I couldn't get to your question, I do apologize, but this has been just overwhelming response here from a question point of view. Got a question from James. Requesting resumes from consulting companies and recruiting agencies results in numerous resumes that look very much alike based on the job description that we may have provided. That's right, because they do keyword searches. That's how they do that. I spend a lot of time screening these resumes and rejecting most of them. Often I ask the recruiting agencies to rank the candidates. Sometimes do, most don't. Most of them actually can't, because they don't have anybody with any testing capabilities in their organization. And so they really don't have the ability to provide you good input here. And some of them that believe they're providing you good input might actually be deceiving you. James goes on, when you find several identical resumes and reject them, there's a possibility that we may be rejecting a great tester. How do we deal with that? Yes, that's always a possibility, and it's a sad possibility that sometimes people are going to pick agents effectively to represent them. In this case, these recruiting agencies that do not do a good job of representing them. And I don't know what you can do about that, James. I mean, that's there's the classic. This is the classic two-sided risk situation, right? This is the whole producer risk, consumer risk. Though in this case, it's more complicated than that. I mean, the recruiting agencies want you to hire someone from them, so their motivations are clear. Your motivation, of course, is to hire the right person, which means that you want, there's a risk that you don't hire a person that you should, and the risk that you do hire a person that you shouldn't. Because of the amount of pain associated with hiring a person that you shouldn't, I think you have to accept a higher level of risk than you otherwise would about the possibility of not hiring someone that you should hire. And that's unfortunate to say, but I think that's just the reality, that the process has to be set up in such a way that you have the lowest possible level of risk associated with hiring somebody that you should not hire, and that will necessarily mean that you're going to accept a higher level of risk hiring someone that, not hiring someone that you should. Okay. All right. So I'm, as I said, I'm out of time. We're a little over here, and I don't want to go to webinar to hang up on us and cut this thing off. So I thank everybody for the great questions, great participation. Really, really enjoyed it. Really appreciated it. And for those of you that couldn't get to your questions, again, I do appreciate them. They're all great questions, and I just wish I had could make this run longer. But again, thank you, and please tune in for future ones. Do get those questions in. I will give you a hint that I start chronographically, if you will, to the questions submitted early. So the earlier you submit a question, the higher the likelihood of me getting to it. So to close this session, let me tell you a little bit more about the resources available through RBCS. We run these free webinar sessions once a month, so check the website, rbcs-us.com, to sign up. It's towards the bottom right-hand side, and you'll get invitations too if you're on our mailing list, so make sure that you're on our newsletter mailing list. You can sign up for that at rbcs-us.com. In that mailing list, you get valuable discounts on consulting and training services, regular newsletter that includes a featured article on testing and quality, and news about what we're doing, as well as notifications about these webinars. And if you'd like a special webinar presentation for your company only of this webinar or any other topic related to software testing, please send an email to info@rbcs-us.com or via our website. And you can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/RBCS, on Facebook at facebook.com/pages/RBCS-INC. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes and get podcasts of these webinars and other types of resources that we post. Like, for example, we have our risk-based testing videos are available via iTunes podcasts. So if you go out to the iTunes store and search for RBCS software testing, you'll find us. And we're also on YouTube. So we got a YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com and search again for RBCS software testing, you'll find our channel and you can subscribe there. And these webinars are posted there as well, and as well as being posted on the digital library of our website after being recorded. So lots of resources available for you. This concludes the webinar. I'd like to thank everyone for joining today. Really great participation, and I'm glad that so many of you had such great questions. And I look forward to seeing you all on future webinars. Thank you.